passion means to suffer, right? In pursuit of something. That's essentially what it means. And I'm willing to suffer and make the time to do that, right? And show up in my business. And you're right, it does require effort, right? And it requires commitment and a huge amount of energy. And so all of the health optimization and biohacking I do will help to support that. But you do have to have a tremendous amount of energy. And that is about having a strong mindset. And I think getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
Depression, suicidal thoughts, being overworked, trying to raise your children as a mother who's doing it all is one of the hardest things we battle when trying to fix our gut. But today, we're going to be sitting down with award-winning nutritionist and high-performance coach Angela Foster, all the way from Australia, to share the secrets of how she was able to get over depression, autoimmune disease, refine her life for optimal success while being the best mother she could be. Today is a training you need to get through the breakthroughs of autoimmune disease and realize what's possible in our lives. Let's get results and let's dive in. Be healing. All right, Angela, you have convinced me no alcohol for the next year. I'm going sober 2025. Thanks so much for being here. I'm so excited to dive in and discuss all of these things we can do to heal our gut, take back our life, heal our spirit, and go through the trials and tribulations that you have gone through immensely and help thousands of women around the world find their beacon, their roadmap to success and be a trailblazer. And, I remember when I was on your podcast, you were just talking about these goals you had to say, alcohol does not serve my life anymore, even though I can have it. It's not like I'm allergic to it or it's causing a flare or I'm getting all these reactions, but it doesn't serve my life. It affects my energy. And you've convinced me to go back. I was sober when I was chronically sick, and I had about 7 glasses of wine the last year, so I rarely ever drink. But it was like that definitive moment to say, I'm going to choose this reality and I'm going to step into this identity despite what other people think or how it affects other people, because I know I can still have fun, I can still connect, I can still love. And it's not a real disconnection. Thanks for being here. What got you to the point where you were able to give up the things that no longer served you?
That's so awesome, Dane. I love the way you put it as well. I just want to stay really quickly before I answer that. Like the way you said, I'm going to do what's right for me, even if it doesn't serve other people. Because how many times do we think we drink because we're just fitting in with other people, right? It feels like, oh, I must have that glass of wine because I'm at dinner and everyone else is having it, or but you yourself don't feel you need it. I think for me, my journey, when we were chatting previously on my show with mental health, it has been such a journey over the last 10 years that I realized that alcohol for me was the final piece in me healing myself, because it was still a place where I'd come off all the medication, and I'm happy to go back in over the history, but I'd come off all the medication I was on, but I was still, I think, using alcohol incorrectly. And I think many of us do, right? Because it's just such a great switch. It's immediate. The moment you've had a drink, you don't need to address all the things that actually did need addressing. I was a bit of a workaholic. Do you know what I mean? And alcohol is a great way of putting that to bed at the end of the day, because it relaxed me and I didn't have to kind of, meet my anxieties or my fears head on, because again, it was some way I could sort of slightly disengage. And I think for me, it's been really powerful. I think the self-development that I've had from actually stopping drinking has been tremendous, and it wasn't something I expected.
And even when you know it, I think this is a big point I want to start with, is I've been sober for years, healing myself of Crohn's and colitis. And as I healed, there was something inside of me that said, I want a choice. I want the freedom to drink. So I'm only going to drink, like for me, I really only was drinking Dry Farms wine that keeps me in ketosis. It's organic. It's low sulfites. It checks all the boxes. And then my own mind or the outside world might say, well, why does it matter? Like, do you have to be that extreme? And it's not a level of being extreme. It's a choice of what serves the life I want and what doesn't. And just already everything I know, everything I've taught and learned over the last 15 years, just being on your podcast and hearing your energy, feeling your comfort, your balance, your health, it was like, I just want more of that. I don't like,
Amazing.
I've had, it's how many times, guys, have we gone out and done something and it's just no longer serving us? And so I think the big point I want to make first and foremost on how are we going to heal our gut, our mind, our spirit, our lives. is being okay with being on your journey and doing what's best for you and realizing it's not a real disconnection from other people, that you still have everything to smile, to laugh, to love, to connect. And why are we being influenced by people whose lives we don't want?
It's a great
That's a big one.
question.
Yeah. So, going back to your story, can you tell us a little bit about your trials, how you turned such pain and suffering into purpose? And you went through major career changes, major life changes, became a mom of, is it three?
Three,
Two?
yeah.
Three,
Three.
right? 3 kids, which nowadays in 2025 seems like, oh my God, that's impossible. How do we take care of three kids and run a successful business and quit my career you worked so hard for? Can you tell us a little bit about that experience and what you were going through physically and how you went through that healing process?
Yeah, for sure. So I was practicing as a lawyer, as you know, for many years, right? And I was a corporate lawyer in London, and I was doing multinational deals. In fact, one of the last ones I did was between London, California, and India. And it was just crazy because trying to manage those time zones just meant you couldn't go to bed. And I think in your 20s, I don't know about you, Dane, but I felt like completely invincible. I could handle anything, And it was when I sort of hit 28, I realized actually, maybe I'm not as resilient as I thought. And that's when I started having hormonal issues. So I was diagnosed PCOS. I was diagnosed with endometriosis. And that was really challenging my fertility because it was at the point where I was thinking, yeah, I want this career and I want to go for partnership, but I also want to start a family. And so that was like my first foray into health. And I realized the link between insulin resistance and hormonal health and things like PCOS. And ultimately, to have my children, I ended up having to have surgery. And then I sort of set this goal of, I was like, okay, so I'm going to go for a baby because they said to me, your next 6 months, best time to have a child, right? Because the endometriosis will regrow. So I had this goal of, okay, right, I'm going to focus on starting a family, but I'm also going for partnership. Which one's going to come in? And as it happened, I was very lucky. I was 8 months pregnant when I made partnership. So both came in, but then it was a little crazy. Yeah. So it's, like, it sounds amazing, but actually the stress, right, at the time, because at first, so I then saw my gynecologist and he was like, if you want to have another one, don't wait too long because pregnancy is amazing for endometriosis, but, don't leave too long gap. So he was like, and this is bad advice because I think we know the contraceptive pill, when we talk about gut health, actually affects the gut pretty dramatically. But I had been prescribed that for many years. And he was like, take the pill and then come off and see what happens. Just take it for 6 months. So I did that. So by the time I was due to go back on maternity leave, I was 3 months pregnant with my second child. And nothing really prepared me for the fact that I was going to experience postnatal depression each time. And with my daughter, who I had a couple of years after that, it got really, really bad. And that's when I eventually, by the time she was 2, was diagnosed with major depressive disorder. And I was just in this world of pain, if you like. It was like a prison in my own mind that I'd created because I thought my kids would be better off without me. I didn't want to go on. I just wanted to turn the thoughts off in my head. But I knew that they needed a mum and I didn't want to leave my husband and my children. So I was kind of in this inner turmoil. And that's when they got flu. I picked it up and ultimately ended up with pneumonia, a double pneumonia on both lungs. Wow. And they started to treat it at home. And then it got so bad that they sent me to the hospital. I'd had a chest x-ray and they were like, we need to see you urgently. And they kept talking to me about my lymph glands. And I was like, I don't really understand. Like, we know we've got a pneumonia. Why do you keep talking to me about those? It feels like maybe you think I've got lung cancer or something like that. At which point the doctor was like, well, it's hard to say you don't without a CT scan. So I was then rushed through for a CT scan. And as it turned out, it was just that the pneumonia had taken such a hold on my system. And I had viral and bacterial pneumonia across both lungs. So me being a typical mum at that point was like, they were going to admit me. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go get my kids from school. He was like, I don't think you understand. Just typical mums carrying on. He was like, I don't think you understand. Like, we need to admit you straight away because you need oxygen. And so then I was admitted. And I remember looking at photos of my kids. They'd been to see me and they'd gone. And I was looking at photos on my phone. And that's when it really hit me. I was like, what am I doing? Like, I was neutropenic. My white blood cell count was so low. So they were giving me intravenous antibiotics, which, as you know, then also affects the gut again. But the viral pneumonia, that was for me to resolve, right, with my immune system. And I didn't really have any immunity. But what's so crazy is that when I looked at the photos of them, I suddenly felt this overwhelming sense of love for my children. And it was a wake-up call. I was like, what have I been doing? I have to get out of here. I have to get well, and I want to see my kids grow up. And within 48 hours of me making that decision, my white blood cell count started to rise. It was like extraordinary.
Wow.
You could just, the way the mind can heal the body, I think is just, has surprised so many people. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about it so much. And so when I left hospital, I felt so grateful. I was like, wow, this is a second chance. And so I was having therapy. I was still on a lot of medication, but I wanted to get well. And that was the beginning of my journey. And alcohol was the final piece, because when I was in a bad spot, I was on antidepressants in the morning and then antipsychotic medication in the evening to stabilize my mood, because I was getting these bipolar episodes. And I would just drink a couple of glasses of wine with bipolar meds at night just to be able to sleep, because I couldn't sleep. And so it was, it was part of my healing process, but it was like the final piece when I gave up, coming up to 3 years ago.
So, I mean, you're here. You're one of the most successful international lawyers. I mean, you got to the top. You made partner. You've achieved these goals. The finances are coming in. The significance is coming in. But you're also diagnosed with 2 autoimmune issues: endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which affects kids. Luckily, you're able to still have 3 kids. But then you started going through extreme depression. Would you say that, for one, does healing start in the mind? I mean, it sounded like something clicked inside of you and you made a decision that you weren't willing to be this person. But, where did that healing start, and where can someone start in that process? Because I can only imagine how overwhelmed you were. Like, I'm not sure if life is worth living. I don't know if I can be the mom that they deserve. I got to the top, made partner. It wasn't enough. I mean, it's just, how crazy is it? You became more depressed after achieving all that stuff you went to school for and dreamed of.
It's crazy, isn't it? And I think, when you think of, I've heard someone say depression is deep rest, right? And deep rest from an identity. And I think what happened with me is that I quickly realized, having had the kids so close together, that I wanted to leave law because the hours were so long. I was never going to see my kids. And so when that happened, what you were saying there about identity, I think is so important, because I lost that status. I lost that identity. Now I was just mum. And I think that's when the depression became really entrenched, because I kind of didn't know who I was. And I knew that I loved my kids, but I felt like I wasn't enough, and that they deserved better than me. And so I was really struggling looking back. I didn't know it at the time, but I think I was trying to find myself. And I think that I had, you can talk about manifestation by thinking positive thoughts, right? I had connected so deeply with the fact that I needed to be gone. I think that's why I became so ill. And I had to reconsider what my priorities in life were. And nothing brings it home like when you suddenly realize that maybe you won't make it through. And I don't think I even in the hospital realized the gravity of it, because what the respiratory consultant later told me, the lung specialist, was, we thought we would have to intubate you because it had got so bad, which would have put me out, right, in a coma. And I didn't realize. And he was like, I cannot believe how your lungs have healed and how that happened. So I think the power of the mind is real, because that's what ultimately changed my physiology. But it was that allowing myself to be me and to think, no, I want to be there for my kids. I want to be their mum. Whereas previously with depression, I'd felt so much guilt and shame and feelings of unworthiness and not good enough, that they deserved better, that I was in this other mindset, if you like. And I'm not saying it was easy. It wasn't all solved in that one moment in the hospital. It was a journey, because when I came out, I had to do all the things you talk about on your show and with your program members, right? I had to heal my gut. I had to change my nutrition. I had to focus on my sleep. I had to dial in my fitness. I had to focus on my mindset. And I did a lot of therapy. And it was the combination of all those things together that helped me heal.
How did you gain the confidence and clarity on what your next steps were going to be after you had the mind change? It's like God gave you a second chance. You're switching, lungs cleared up, your mom. Now what? Do I go vegan? Do I go paleo? Do I read this book or that? Do I take these supplements? How do I work out? How do I feel with that? How did you come up with that clarity and sense of confidence on what your next steps were going to be?
So it's a great question. I had read quite a bit when I had PCOS because I realized the link with blood glucose control and the microbiome to a degree, although the microbiome research at that point wasn't that strong. But I realized the link with blood glucose, and insulin sensitivity. So I started reading more on nutrition, and then I sought out a functional medicine doctor. And I was like, look, this is what has happened. And they were like, you will have lost I'd lost a ton of weight, but you would have lost loads of bacteria as well, right? With that much oral antibiotics and then intravenous antibiotics in the hospital. So we started working on my health and helping me get stronger. And I think that key part of it was when I was having therapy, they introduced me to self-compassion. And I don't think I'd had any before. I would just always give, like put myself last, work long hours, workaholic. And so I was like, okay, maybe I need to be compassionate. And that was really hard at first because they didn't like me. So I had to kind of create a new identity as part of that for me to step into.
Wow. I didn't like me, even though you had become what the whole world would perceive as success, right? I mean, all these things in the outside world would you perceive to be amazing in ABC ways. I've got the kids and I look great and I know you lost weight and all that, but there was something inside. I didn't like me. And I think that's the conviction of once you release what you have to be for the world and start being what you want to be in this life, despite what other people think, answers become clear.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned there your anchor is you didn't have all the answers, but you had been reading, you were educated, and you're this anchor of, I want to regulate my insulin or my glucose levels. So was that kind of that first carrot of, if I can learn to regulate my glucose spikes, that's going to help with my mind, repairing my gut. That's going to help with PCOS, autoimmune. It's going to help with my microbiome and diversity. And, it's going to also help with cortisol levels or anxiety, which can be related with glucose spikes. Was that kind of an anchor that you kind of worked off of?
Yeah, so that was definitely one of them. I started to think, like I noticed that when I was controlling my blood sugar better, I had better energy. So I could see that, right? That was giving me consistency. I noticed that when I exercised, my mood would increase. So I was like, so in addition to the medication, if I'm exercising, I'm going to be a lot more stable. And so then I realized that my bad days, if you like, were when I hadn't. And as the kids were growing, they were like, they would say to my husband, or he would say, be careful, Mama hasn't exercised today. It became a bit of a joke. So it was like, okay, I need to exercise. And that still has stayed with me to this day. I can probably put on one hand the days out of a year that I won't exercise, and they're through force of circumstance or, like, I don't know, we're traveling or something and I can't get there. But even then it's got to be a walk. And that has been probably, I would say, it's really interesting because I know when you and I chatted on my show, like the power of consistency, these tiny steps, how they compound, because I think everyone assumes, right, it's a big thing. And it wasn't. It was like little steps I had to do. So, make sure my nutrition was like nutritious in the first place. It had, vitamins and things. And then, now I know lots more things about it, right? I know that the polyphenols, all those bright colors, feed our healthy gut bacteria. I didn't know that then. It was just very basic. It was like, oh yeah, more fruit and veg, let me incorporate more of those things.
I think a big takeaway right here from what you're saying, Angela, is that you changed your mind, that you no longer wanted to feel the way you felt. So you took action in a way that balanced your mental state, emotional state, and physical state. And then you use that as a consistent anchor to say, I'm not going to go back to the feelings. I think what a lot of people miss is, I'm going to make these changes and then all of that will go away. No, it's a balance. It's like riding a wave. If you don't stay in it, you're going to fall. So I think what you're saying there too is, if I stop exercising, some of those feelings might start coming up. I don't feel as well as I want to feel. If I don't eat this way, I don't feel as good. If I have alcohol, I don't feel as good. And that's a desire and acceptance to push towards what you want and not just do it as a magic answer. Like, you rebuilt your lifestyle more than built a diet. Would you say that's true?
100%. And rebuilt a persona, right? So one of the most inspiring books for me was Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Me too. Huge.
Was it for you?
Oh, it was. I was on a plane. It was like, bing, that was it. All of it.
Amazing book. And I realized, I was like, oh my God, that's what I have to do. I've got to break this habit of being me and create a new self. So then how on earth do you create a new self, right? I had to start slowly, bit by bit, of going, okay, this is the type of mum I want to be. So, if I was really irritable because I felt depressed one day, and, there were days I look back on and I feel so bad because my son, who was like 5 years old at the time, he would spend 90 minutes pulling me out of bed saying, Mummy, please, we're going to be late for school, because I couldn't get out of bed, and I am not proud of that, but I have to be compassionate to who I was then. And so I would then start thinking, okay, right, I can see that when I exercise, and my medication was helping at that point to stabilize me. I wasn't ready to come off it at that point. But if I exercise and I do the right things, and as you say, I crowd out the negative thoughts by putting good things in, right? A famous thing, like, I don't know, I think it was one of my actual business mentors I remember saying to me, it's hard to feel depressed when you've got Tony Robbins between your ears. I mean, whether you love him or not, and he's very, like,
Oh, Tony. I love
Marmite, we would
Tony.
call it in the UK. Some people love him, but you can't be depressed, right, if he's motivating. So I realized I could just distract myself. So, and I get all this inner child work and stuff like that. I did therapy, loads of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes with therapy, if you do it too long, I think there's a chance you're going to stay stuck because you're in your past self and you keep revisiting it and going over.
Hamster
and you
wheel.
can't progress, right? So you're still trapped.
So much juice and so much takeaways there. The biggest takeaway I had from Joe Dispenza's book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, was this idea of metacognition, to be aware of your feelings but not identify with them.
Yes.
Meaning that if you feel depressed or you feel lost or you feel sick, it doesn't make you a sick or depressed person. It just means you have that feeling. So do not identify with the feeling, become aware of it and be able to respond to it. That's what I'm hearing. It was so genius in what you did. How do you go from I can't get out of bed for 2 hours to building a top 1% podcast, leading thousands of women around the world, going to the gym 6-7 days a week? How does that work? Because with depression, we feel lazy. We feel like we can't move. We feel like nothing's possible. Angela, how do you go from I'm acting like I'm the bottom 1% of I can't move, nothing can work, after being so successful, all the way down, and then all the way back up and being able to balance and stay there as a mom of 3? And it comes down to my feelings do not define me. And this is not me. This is just a feeling, meaning all of us will have a day where we feel anxious, overwhelmed, depressed, not good enough, uncertain, ugly, right? Dumb. We're all going to have these feelings come, but then how do we respond to the feeling? Become aware of it. That's a feeling. I don't want it. These are the assets. These are the energies I can now implement to battle those feelings. And once you realize that and you get rid of the curtain of I am this person, I am sick, I am depressed, then all of a sudden you just realize it's just a sign your body, your spirit saying, hey, I need something. I need something. And then you got to be aware of what that is and implement it. And then the sky's the limit. And
That's
Tony
so true.
Robbins, I mean, his books, Unleash the Giant Within, Unlimited Power, 1980, 87, and 1992, they were game changers for me too. With me nearly dying of Crohn's and colitis and having severe IBD, I nearly died at 27 years old. So my 27th birthday, right in there, I almost passed away. Everything you went over with the severe depression, the pneumonia that almost became life-threatening, and severe depression where I don't know if I want to be here, which is crazy to think now. Both of us are saying the same thing. The mindset had to change. We had to condition a new reality and then practice it so that those ugly experiences, whether physical or emotional, wouldn't come creeping back in. Because Tony Robbins was huge for me, like that language change. I don't talk bad about myself anymore. I use affirmations of what will be, what I can create. I realize that happiness is something that you just create on a daily basis. Look around. Look at this. Look at the sky. Look at the sun. Look at the trees. Look at the people and smile. It's something that you condition, like a bicep curl. I always feel like the last big thing in these books is that truth is just a perception. It's a conditioning. Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you successful? Are you good enough? Are you pretty enough? Are you strong enough? Are you smart enough? It's just a perception. It's a reality that you create. And then how do we compare that? And why are we comparing something that gives us a negative reality? That's just not smart. So
It's
I
so
love what
true.
you're saying. I love what you're saying.
I heard, I think it was Gabby Bernstein I heard say that, the inner you are the sunshine behind the clouds. And that's what I
Yeah.
realized. And it was in a point of deep hypnosis when I did hypnosis part of my therapy for 2 hours, when I realized, and you just move away when Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about being no body, right? No person. You come away and you realize your inner essence and that there is perfection there, right? Your spiritual DNA is perfect, but it's the ego and everything that you put around it that isn't and has these imperfections and rule you. And when you take that away, you can just be so much more loving to yourself and to other people. And that was a really profound shift in me. So I had to just do it step by step, like you were saying. And when I realized what you said of I am not my thoughts, that was the most powerful thing ever. I was like, what? You mean I don't have to believe my thoughts? Like, they might not be true. So that was a really big thing, but it was work. I mean, I remember sitting there, with therapy sheets, doing cognitive behavioral therapy and sitting down and taking it to my therapist the following week. And I would have to go, what was the thought? Because the first thing I found, and maybe people listening to this can try this exercise if they're struggling, is you don't think of the thought. The first thing you get is the feeling, right? Whether that's in your heart space, whether it feels like butterflies in your tummy, but you suddenly feel this thing and you're like, this feels wrong. And when you feel that, you realize you've stepped away from your inner sense of self, right? From source. And so at that point, you can then track back and go, hang on a minute, like I don't feel good anymore. There must be a thought. There's always a thought before. Even if someone says something to you, it's what you think about what they said that's causing the harm. They can't physically cause you harm with what they say. So then I was like, what was that thought? And I got good at capturing it. And then I could dismantle it and challenge it and turn it into something else and make it a source of strength and power. And so I just got good at that. Like, why am I having this feeling? Oh, it's because I thought that. Well, I don't have to have that thought. That thought isn't me. I can choose a different one now. And it gave me a choice.
So
but
good.
It was slow. It was progress.
You cannot heal or change your life in any way, disease, business, family, without these tools and sharpening them. This is not something you just become aware of. It's something you condition. I think is a big point you're saying. It's you have to protect your reality. You have to protect your mind so you can make healthy decisions. Every time I've ever drank too much or ate the bad foods or, gone back to gluten or sugars, it was because I had a bad thought and I was overwhelmed. And then the feelings dictated my next action. And that's a lack of conditioning. That's a lack of being prepared. That's a lack of setting up your next day for success. I'm going to sleep this way. I'm going to love this way. I'm going to go see a friend. I'm going to schedule this call because that's going to balance me against the negative energy that comes, which is life and adversity. Life and stress, it's part of it. Adversity and stress, 100% are going to come with it. So this is how we defend ourselves against self-sabotage. And this is how we defend ourselves and become aware of these feelings, these things that are driving me towards things that we know are hurting me. Angela, your big three are huge. Not exercising, eating sugars and crappy foods, and starting to focus on more high protein, high fat, high polyphenol, colorful foods, and then getting away from alcohol that is a depressant. So defending against all of that by setting up your day in a way that I know I have enough love, happiness, self-care, peace, that creates that balance that I'm okay like this. And that's how you go 3 or 4 years without desiring a drink. I think, before we got on this podcast, you said something. You said, Dane, I said, are you ever going to drink alcohol again? I think it's a big thought of people who do want to go sober 90 or go gluten-free for a year. Well, will I ever do it again? And you said something so beautiful. You said, I just don't have a desire. There's nothing there for me. So you're not saying, yeah, I'm committed to never having a drink for the next 100 years. It's why? There's nothing there for me. And it's like the curtain has gone away. And that's how we get into a place where I no longer eat pro-inflammatory foods that hurt my gut. I no longer need to do drugs and alcohol that are really holding me back from my perfect, beautiful life. And bringing these thoughts in that are self-sabotaging and these feelings. And I think that's where we get to the defense. I want to jump into the offense here because, Angela, there's no way anyone out there listening can follow the same road of success you've followed with 3 kids, being mom, creating one of the best podcasts around, top 1% of podcasts. I mean, how do you do it? How do you go out into an entrepreneurship world, build a brand new business, help thousands of people, women around the world with these same problems of like nutrition, exercise, mindset, you know, gaining back that confidence and clarity, looking the way they want, helping to reduce these chance of diseases, and be a mom of 3, and be, everything you need to be for everyone in your family? How do you get on the offense of this? So now you're not getting hurt by these things, but now you have to find time. Now you have to add extra stress, because to start a business is stressful. To push to the next level and start traveling again and going to parties again and, going to the soccer games while having to, work through the night sometimes to build your dreams. How do you get on the offense of this? How do you manage the stress towards building the life you want?
That's a very good question. So I would say that you need to have a sense of purpose. That's what has guided me through that transition, right, of getting my health and everything back on track. And as I did that, I realized that if I can do this, there are so many, I work mostly with women, but there are so many people out there that also need the same help. And so I felt that I was given a second chance, and that my way of giving back is that I want in turn to impact more people in the world and help them to do the same. So if my story is going to inspire just a tiny piece of your life, then I will have done the thing that I wanted to do on this show. Do you know what I mean? If it just gives you that little bit of thing of like self-agency, of like, wow, if she can do it, I can change, and I can resolve my issues, then that's what I want, because I feel so passionate about it. And, passion means to suffer, right? In pursuit of something. That's essentially what it means. And I'm willing to suffer and make the time to do that, right? And show up in my business. And you're right, it does require effort, right? It does, just like being a lawyer did. And it requires commitment and a huge amount of energy. And so all of the health optimization and biohacking I do will help to support that. But you do have to have a tremendous amount of energy. And that is about having a strong mindset. And I think getting comfortable being uncomfortable, and that process that you and I were just talking about how we changed our lives and how we went through that thought process and feelings, is that sometimes it feels uncomfortable. But if you're in pursuit of something bigger than yourself, you will do it. And I think that's the thing. And to just see the joy of when you see people resolve their issues and their lives get transformed, and the ripple effect that has in the world, and like everything you're putting out with your show, Dane, and how many people it's impacting, right? It's tremendous. It's just phenomenal.
Oh, I agree with you. It's so funny. We've had different experiences from different parts of the world, but we're coming together with the same ideas of pain to purpose, passion, and willing, making it about more than ourselves. I think I want to echo what you said, but add a little bit on there is, the more you practice your defense of being able to consistently eat this way, consistently live this way, to not be influenced by people's who, especially with their lives, you don't even want their lives. You get used to the feelings, and even though I'll feel overwhelmed sometimes, or I'll feel maybe a little envious, especially when I'm not eating pizza. I grew up on pizza and, all these fun times. I realize that there's nothing really there, and I get better at it. So when you go on the offense, as those stressors and anxieties start coming in, you've already been practicing staying in balance. Now it's a bigger wave coming when you put more stress on your life, but it's just the same thing. You have to tweak your life. You have to tweak what you're willing to give up for what you want. I'm going to bed at 9:30 because I want to get up tomorrow and I have 2 podcasts to shoot, and I want to build that company. And I'm going to invest $10,000 in building my own success thing, or I'm going to make partner, or I'm going to get a promotion, or we're going to start, saving up for that new house. There's a letting go, and then an adding on, and then recalibrating balance for me. And
very much.
Yeah. And it's just, and that's for me, a big thing for me is prayer and purpose, and just talking out loud and having a place to be heard. I love EFT tapping. EFT tapping really helps me. And I know you mentioned hypnosis, another really good one. Or EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So much of success is just recalibrating balance, because every time you want, there will be a sense of anxiety and overwhelm to make it a reality. And every time you go off and do things, especially if it's away from the productive you, there's an emotional experience that you have to recalibrate. New Year's party, right? Everyone's out on New Year's. Well, how do I live and have a great time and live in balance with this without hurting myself? And that's just a conditioning and a new lifestyle that you come to terms with in your heart. And then your mind is the driver of it. Your mind is the conviction of it, but then your heart comes to peace with it. And then those feelings coming into your spirit no longer dictate your actions. And so you mentioned biohacking. What have been like your top 2 or 3 biohacking efforts that have helped change your life and given you and your community the most success?
So I think and this, you can do this sort of free and you can do it with a biohack, right? Is one of the most transformational things is actually getting circadian alignment. Most people don't have this, right? So we know there's a 24-hour clock that our body runs on. And if you actually look into it, anyone can go look this up. You have certain hormones released at certain times of the day. You know, you're more insulin sensitive, for example, in the morning. We want melatonin released at night. It's a powerful antioxidant. We want cortisol at the right time of day in the morning to get us going. And what's really interesting is that when you look at mental health cases, 100% of them have some degree of circadian misalignment. That's the thing. So one of the best things that you can do is to align your sleep-wake cycle and to get access to light. And so when you get access to light, it changes the game significantly. So if you go like an hour or 2 after sunrise, then the amino acids in your eyes, things like tyrosine, react with the photons of light, and they produce chemicals like serotonin and dopamine that are going to make you feel more elevated, right? So actually getting that circadian alignment and access to light. Now, people might say, oh my God, it's so dark outside, but it is. Here in the UK, we're only at light between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. at this time, right? That's where biohacking can help, for sure. And, you know, you can use red light therapy lamps and then go out later, right? Red light therapy, most of the sun, or at least half, about 49% of the sun's spectrum at any time of day is on the infrared, right? And we have far infrared, mid, near, and then we have the red light. And the red light we see at sunrise and sunset. But there's a lot of infrared and it's very anti-inflammatory, which is why we feel so good in summer. And the near infrared affects our mitochondria. So if we can't get access to as much light, because even if we do go out, we're covered up, we can use things like red light therapy devices and infrared saunas to biohack that, right? And that's going to help lower inflammation, improve our mood. So that would be one of the like big ones that I'm really, really a fan of. And you can do it for free. As I say, you can use the sun if you want to.
Well, I mean, that's huge. And you're absolutely right. What that will do for your sleep and your serotonin production and anyone dealing with depression or anxiety or feelings of overwhelm. Get outside, use the sun. It's absolutely free to help reset that circadian rhythm. Fantastic point. And I think that's, again, going back to one of our main themes here is I don't want to feel this way. And what actions am I going to take? And that's all it is. I mean, aren't the answers a lot of times simple once we get over the intense emotions of what we're feeling, like the pain of what we're feeling, and then we're done with it. And then we start looking and saying, what gives me balance? And that's what biohacking essentially is balancing the body. Very well said. I agree with you. And I think that, again, I want to, echo this is no matter what you're dealing with right now, you're dealing with IBS or diverticulitis or Crohn's colitis or PCOS, endometriosis, depression, it all comes down to the same thing, which is getting in balance emotionally, spiritually, and physically, and then just making it clear, getting conviction around it, acting on it, and then using metacognition. Don't let your feelings dictate your identity. And they're just a signal that you need to take action somewhere else, that the body, the spirit is missing something. I think, Angela, you're a perfect testament to that. And something I want to end today with is this. I'm very attracted to like an energy or vibration of a person. When I was on your podcast, one of the reasons I asked you to come on is because when we're chronically sick, we're out of vibration. We're out of whack. We don't feel good. We feel lost. We feel isolated. We're in a bubble. And I felt like you've done your energy has done us wonders for staying in balance through the storms. I feel a very deep balance in you with how you talk about life and how you live it feels like that's what I think we should all strive for, is this sense of conditioning a sense of happiness and peace and being able to recalibrate. None of us are perfect and all of us are going to feel bad, but our skill set and conditioning of recalibrating ourselves so we can feel the most joy. I think you've done that quite well.
Thank you, Dane. Thank you. I'm so grateful to you. I love that. And I think, for anyone listening to this, like, just take it one day at a time. Even when I gave up alcohol, first I tried 30 days and I did it multiple times and I went back to it, right? And then I was like, I'm going to try 90 days. So I did 90 days, and that got me over because I knew there was good research, right? That at 66 days, you kind of like, you can form a new habit. So I was like, I wonder how long it will take me, should I say, to stop getting these little pop-up reminders of like, it would be a good idea to have a glass of wine. And it took around 50 or so days. So again, it was just like sitting with that discomfort, doing something else. So I went out for a walk instead. And then when I got to the 90 days, I was like, God, I'm so close. I'm 10 off 100. Why don't I just turn the 90 days into 100, right? And then it was like, well, if I've done 100, why don't I go for 6 months? And then for 6 months, it was 12 months. And it just started like that. You know, you can set small goals because of compounding. It works with wealth, and it works with health, and it works with mindset. You just start really small.
That's such a good takeaway and a big key point. Last question. When you have a bad day now, what are your first things you think I'm going to go do to recalibrate my energy and my mind?
If I have a bad day, the first thing I'll do is move my body, because I think your physiology is a faster way to move your psychology.
That is so, so true. Be aware of your feelings. Don't identify with them. Angela, thank you so much for being on. This is so huge. And if we just move here, we condition these things, we make a decision to walk it, not just know it, but to walk it, our lives can change. Where can people find you and learn more about you or connect with you, Angela?
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me on, Dane. It's been really fun. People can find me on Instagram. I'm at Angela S. Foster. My podcast is High Performance Health. And if you want to get like a snapshot of where you're at in terms of your health and vitality, we have a free quiz, and that's over at yourtotalhealthcheck.com. And we'll send you your scores and report and how you can improve as well.
Fantastic. We'll post all those links in the show notes, guys, too. Angela, thanks so much for being here. God bless. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Dane. You too.
Hey, thanks so much for checking out our content. And if you liked it, please like, subscribe, and share. It greatly helps us out. And if you need personal help with IBD, IBS, or your gut health, you can go ahead and schedule a session with our team to deep dive on your case and your needs and how we can get real results. I'll put a link right around here or below. And just remember that you're not alone. Please reach out and connect. We can do this, but more importantly, we can do it together. Happy healing.